This is the Mora Bushcraft knife in black. It's 5 years old. I think it's time to do a review and let you know how it stood up against the test of time and abusive usage. For a budget bushcrafting knife, I think you're going to like what I have to say. You can find it in other colours now. I believe there's an orange one, a high-vis orange, and there's a desert. There's more than enough reviews of this knife when it's brand new. Well, I thought I'd do something different and show you what it's like after it's been beaten for 5 years. Start with the basics. The Mora Bushcraft knife is a carbon steel rat tail tang knife. Not a full tang knife. Some people have a problem with this, thinking, oh, it's going to snap. From the usage that I have given this knife, and the abuse, I think, is probably the better word, because you do have to work with them hard sometimes, it hasn't broken. I have seen tests around the internet of people doing their best to actually break it, and some considerable effort is required to actually break this knife. So I don't think that's too much of a problem. Dimensions, I suppose you'd want to know. The blade is that long, and the handle's that long. But the knife is 23.5 centimeters long, 235 millimeters. Bear with me with the information. The blade is 109 millimeters long. Sometimes you'll see it advertised just rounded up to 110 millimeters. So the handle obviously is then 125 millimeters or 126 millimeters, depending on how accurate you wish to be. The depth of the blade is 23 millimeters at the handle. Obviously it tapers off. What did I talk about? The blade thickness is only 32 millimeters. And for a heavy duty knife, this doesn't seem like much, but I find that it's very versatile. Handle material, here we are, polypropylene and rubber. So the outer grip itself is rubber. So the blade is made of carbon steel, which makes it a bit stronger. Obviously, it being a Scandinavian Swedish knife company, it has the traditional Scandi grind on the blade with a very, very acute angle of 11 degrees. It is phenomenally sharp when it comes out of the packet brand new. Razor sharp. I'm not going to sit here and do a test of cutting paper, because you don't buy that knife to cut paper, do you? The knife is made in Sweden with Swedish steel, which currently some people argue is the finest steel in the world. The weight of the knife is 125 grams.
There, it looks like I've lost 5 grams somewhere.
The sheath with the belt clip and the belt loop is only right-handed. Me being left-handed, I can use it with the left hand, put it on the left hand side, but the Survival edition model has a clip-on section that holds a DC4 sharpening stone and what I consider to be a very good ferrocerium fire steel. It's the reason I say it's good is because it's quite soft, but very easy to use. One thing I have noticed with these long-term reviews on the YouTubes is no one tells how much they've used that particular item over that time period. Some do, so credit to those. So I want to give full disclosure as well. The first 3 years of owning the Mora Bushcraft Black Survival, I used it pretty much every other weekend, every second weekend, I'd be out in the forest, and I was using it quite extensively. After that, I started to use the knife a lot less. When you go out a lot, you find you get into a rhythm of how things are going to go. You know you're going to set up the shelter, you know you're going to process wood, you know, depending on the weather, what's going to happen. So, and what you need to do and prioritise on. So, in the last 2 years of the knife's life, it hasn't been used that much. So what is the Mora Bushcraft knife good at and bad at? We'll start with the bad things first. It gives bad advice. Don't listen. Start with the blade, the most important part of the knife, I guess, the pointy bit. It is bad at holding a sharp edge. And that's something else I want to touch on a little later on. Because of the extreme angle of the Scandinavian grind, it does lose its brightness quite quickly. But there is a DC4 sharpening stone on the knife, so you can brighten it up when required. If you want to use it as an actual chopper, not really, it's not going to work. There's not enough weight, and obviously the blade and the size of the knife itself, it's not really leans itself towards that. Battening some thicker bits of wood can be quite difficult, because what protrudes out the edge of that log that you want to batten is the clip point. So you end up just mashing up the baton instead. The blade is made of carbon steel, but it is prone to rust. If you don't clean it and dry it properly before you put it back into storage, you will find some rust spots on there next time you come to use it. The black section of the blackening of the blade is described as DLC coating, which apparently, from what I found, means a diamond-like coating, which still doesn't tell me anything. But it makes it nicer, makes it black, and it's great out of the box. It doesn't actually come in a box, it comes in a blister pack. So when it's new, it looks fantastic and cool. Once you've sharpened it a few times, that will come off very quickly. When the knife edge starts to get dull, you find that curve can be a little bit of a hindrance, especially on harder woods. What I did with the knife was put it on a large sharpening stone and just start working my way along each side of the blade just to create something a bit flatter, thinking that would help. The good things, where do we start? So what is a knife like to use after a few years? No different from new. Any carpentry work, really. Making pointy sticks, making pot hangers, pot holders, whittling, rounding off the tops of poles for using for your shelter, and knurling, I believe it's called. Preparing food, preparing game. The tip of the blade is very fine, the actual very end of the blade, so you can use it for making holes. Obviously feather sticking. No, you're not going to get to see a demonstration of me doing it. I am atrocious. The shaking of my hands doesn't lend itself well for high speed or even low speed feather sticking. The construction in this knife is exemplary. It's fantastic. The handle is still in excellent condition. The rubber's still grippy, not peeling off. The plastic underneath and at the butt and the end of the blade is still in excellent condition, despite being abused and whacked quite a few times by little bits of wood and batons. Even when the handle is wet, it's still quite sturdy in the hand. And the little finger grip, the index finger, does create a lot more stability, in my opinion. Not for everyone, admittedly, but it is very comfortable to use. I have small hands, and the handle is big enough for me to hold. I know people who have used that knife already with a larger hand. You'll get more control and more stability from it. Nothing's broken. Nothing's come loose. Nothing's peeling or falling off. The blade is still firmly attached inside the handle. It's never come loose. and it's been whacked and beaten and dropped, even on rocks. The spine of the knife keeps a good sharp 90 degrees for striking on the ferro rod as well. The belt clip is still doing a very good job. It's not loose or corroding, but it's still clipping and holding fast. I do like the little feature on the back with the holes. It's either a weight-saving feature or, more likely, so you can hang it off of a button on your trousers. Some old-style outdoor trousers, or maybe even new outdoor trousers, will have buttons around the waistband for hanging braces. So you can clip it onto that too, which I think is quite clever. Does the plastic sheath hold the knife securely still? Yes, ferro rod is, I think, very good. It's a soft ferrocerium, so it's very easy to get a lot of sparks off there when you strike. Does anyone else have that problem with the ridges? Or is it just me because I'm shaking and not having a smooth strike? I'd like to know in the comments, please. There's also a little tab on the top of the ferro rod handle to make sure that it doesn't get pulled out as well. Never put a lanyard onto the ferro rod handle, but you can if you want. One thing I do like about the ferro rod clip holder, the teeth expand as you put the ferro rod in, so over time the ferro rod is going to get thinner, smaller in diameter, so the little clips will work their way back in and keep a secure grip on the rod on the sheath as well. It's never fallen off. It is a lot more expensive now than when I purchased it, but call that inflation if you will. Still definitely worth the money, and it's an exceptional knife. I'm not going to call this version a budget knife because of the accessory pack of the fire steel and the sharpening stone. If you don't wish to purchase those, the knife is cheaper. You can just get the knife on its own in the sheath. But I would recommend buying the fire steel and the sharpening stone as it's the survival version. You can purchase it separately. You can even buy the sheath separately if you do manage to break it or squash it for whatever reason. Replacement parts are available from Mora. So yes, back to the conclusion. After 5 years, this knife has been very faithful. I would use the word faithful companion, but unfortunately Mora already have a knife called the Companion, and I don't want to confuse or cause any trouble. Keep it oiled, keep it dry, look after the blade, and it will look after you. It's an excellent knife, it will serve you well.
Don't worry, it's a dead tree.
So what is the Mora Bushcraft Survival? It's been construction of this